The final nail in the coffin was watching the harm religion was doing around me. I know that the standard response of liberal Christians is to say, "Oh, those are crazy fringe groups, they don't really represent the religion." But when beliefs directly inform actions, and these beliefs stem from direct passages in a book that, at least traditionally, is supposed to be the central text of the religion, I found it very naive to think religion was guiltless. For example, someone stopped being my friend because I accepted evolution. My friend Aaron, who is gay, had a very traumatic experience accepting himself. After finally coming out, his parents repeatedly broke up all his attempted relationships and forced him to go to Pray the Gay Away conference. Now I believe he is living independently of them and happy. By the way, they also homeschooled him, and when he was little forced him to throw away all his Wizard of Oz memorabilia because of witchcraft. This was in 2007. Yes, in 2007, this is still going on. I encountered a street preacher once yelling about the usual stuff. When I told him he was doing other Christians a disservice, so you see, I was standing up for liberal Christians, he yelled at me, "Prepare for hell, Jew." I'm not Jewish, but I look it. This is one of the key events in my adult life because it made me realize that even though this guy was nuts, I had been taught that Jews went to hell as well. So in truth, was this guy really nuts or just more assertive than other Christians? My ex-girlfriend would often go on about how she felt that, as a woman, she was created to be a follower. Her roommate, Joy, took that to an extreme and was not only uncomfortable around boys before she got married, which I can understand. At 19 years old, she was terrified of dancing with boys. My girlfriend had to talk to her to convince her that there are dances that weren't sexual. Growing up religious, my reaction to atheists was the same that many seem to have. That they were smug intellectuals, so obsessed with evidence that they had no spiritual endeavors. Maybe the reason this image is so prevalent is because it's the most basic gut reaction. But now I found myself wondering, what is wrong with caring about evidence? Outside of religion, every single belief we have, choice we make, or conclusion we draw is always based on evidence and what we observe around us. Shouldn't we care if what we believe is actually true or not? All my life I had been taught faith was a beautiful thing. But what is faith? Holding strong confidence in a belief in spite of adversity? Isn't that also called gullibility? How on earth was that a good thing? I had been taught that it was an encouraging thing when someone had strong, unshakable faith. Looking at it now, wasn't that called stubbornness? Wasn't that simply saying, I believe because I want it to be true? I have to say that my parents really were great compared to the other horror stories I've heard. They disapproved, but their view was different. With them, it wasn't so much a matter of believing Christianity was the truth and I was going to hell. Rather, it was simply the blanket belief that it's just always better to be religious. A religious person is compassionate and meditative, while an atheist is simply a hedonist or someone who never thinks deep thoughts. But this clearly wasn't true. If anything, one ponders moral philosophy and the meaning of life much greater when there isn't a biblical doctrine framing it for you. I was frequently told, don't be too sure of your atheism. You can't know those things at 24. How come they had no problem with me being sure about Christianity all the early years? The feeling I had wasn't so much that those around me had rejected me, but that one more wall had been erected. I made a few people uncomfortable. One Easter, I asked the question, how can we say that Muslim fundamentalists blowing each other up over 72 virgins is backwards and barbaric, yet here we are celebrating a God being brought back from the dead who sacrificed himself to satisfy his own wrath? This was met with cries of, "That's offensive," and "You may not care, but this day is sacred for some." I replied, "Okay, get offended all you want, but you haven't answered the criticism. That never got a reply. What was sad was how pitiful the arguments they made back at me were. One family friend tried to present her strongest arguments for belief. They consisted of Pascal's wager, any atheist can debunk that one in minutes, and the assertion that atheism had been responsible for Hitler and the Nazis. I suppose this is why atheists are considered smug and arrogant, because at times we're presented with arguments by critics who honestly need to go back to school. Other times came the arguments like, isn't it nice to think there's a God? Otherwise life is boring. Or, I went skiing in the mountains and marveled at God's beautiful creation. I wish they could understand that when they speak that way, they are feeding into Christianity's appeal to the ego, the illusion that things were created just for you. Worst of all were the personal attacks, that I had just decided to reject religion because I thought it was the cool thing to do, that I was being selfish, and, of course, that I would go to hell. I don't believe in hell, but the assertion that you deserve to be sentenced to an eternal Auschwitz after death is rather unpleasant. No one understood that it took me years of pondering and asking those same philosophical questions all of us ask to bring me to my position. The only position that I feel is honest and not selfish. Just keep an open mind. If anything, religion is what closes your mind. It tells you exactly how to interpret things. In truth, atheism is really the most open-minded position of all. It's not emotional, but purely objective and asserts, I go where the evidence leads. Before I wrap up, I'm reminded of a quote in Woody Allen's wonderful film, Crimes and Misdemeanors. Martin Landau's character tells Sam Waterston's rabbi, I live in the real world, you live in the kingdom of heaven. I've managed to keep free of the real world, but suddenly it's found me. The nice-sounding ideals of religion seem detached from the starkness of reality. He later adds, God is a luxury I can't afford. Those with privilege and without problems can afford a textbook definition of morality. The rest of us have to be practical. Finishing up the night at the Moonstruck Diner, Malia has proven to be a big hit with the group. We mingle with one another into the evening and discuss our traumas, some of which are heartbreaking. I listen sadly to those rejected by their families because of the Catholic Church's teachings. Truly, lives have been destroyed, all for the promise of an unknowable afterlife. If we were a pack of vile sinners, or Nazis for that matter, then I could understand the objection of the religious. But instead, we're a community of honest citizens, bringing meaning to an indifferent universe, and defining who we are by our choices. Our capacity for morality and philosophical meditations have not ceased simply because we have shut the book on Abraham's God. To me, at least, the story is a success because I am part of a community and more in touch with the living world. Whatever awaits me in the afterlife, my biggest responsibility is to this life and to the next generation.